Welcome to the Some More News Bunker. Today, crisis at the border. The border has become a place of absolute mayhem. It's a surge, a calamity, and there's no camera there. Are we not doing the back and forth? We got like a camera here, and then we get a little more heightened stakes of, okay, we can't afford it. That's fine. All right, well, hi, folks. There's a crisis at the border. It's gone absolutely tits up, and we're all basically f***ed.
The Biden administration continues to face growing scrutiny over its handling of the migrant surge at our southern border.
We are witnessing what is an unmitigated disaster at our southern border, and you will pay the full price.
Lawless chaos on our southern border.
Wow. That sounds super serious. I'm sure all of this panic is based on facts and research. I mean, there's no way that Ted Cruz would cosplay as Han Solo and stand in a bunch of reeds to pretend like he's tracking down smugglers just to get political attention, right?
We're at the edge of the river. On the other side of the river is Mexico. On the other side of the river, we have been listening to and seeing cartel members.
Wow, the cartels are right behind you, Ted! That seems really dangerous. Can we see these cartels you say are right behind you? No? There's no footage of the cartels right behind you? Oh gosh golly darn and shoot. But I'm sure all of those cartels are right there laughing at us right out of frame. But Ted Cruz isn't the only one with exclusive dramatic footage of the border calamity. CNN seems to have fallen for a staged border crossing. According to the American Prospect and The Guardian, footage that CNN and Breitbart purported to be of a migrant boat crossing seems likely to have been staged, potentially by Border Patrol. The problem with the footage, that border activists and journalists point out, is that it occurs in an area of the Rio Grande that is so heavily monitored and patrolled, it would be almost impossible for a mass migrant crossing to go undetected by Border Patrol. Furthermore, the behavior of these smugglers doesn't add up. In the CNN footage, the smuggler was dressed in a black balaclava and fatigues, a behavior that The Guardian points out is unusual, given that most smugglers dress similarly to migrants, so they won't be instantly clocked as the smuggler and face harsher punishment. Also, in a fun little slip-up, there's a conversation heard behind the camera where two men can be heard saying, "Do you ever hook these guys up?" The other responding, "Yeah, 2 or 3 of them, they're grade A." According to former Border Patrol Jen Budd, as a former agent, what I hear is these men possibly talking about paying this smuggler off to gather a bunch of unsuspecting migrants and have them cross in a particular place in order to get this shot. So hey, it's like an episode of Punk'd, except Ashton Kutcher is playing with human lives just to get good footage. But isn't there a surge? Crossings have gone up. Big numbers are bad. You see, big numbers are worse than small numbers. And I have no interest in looking at nerd shit like data or, God forbid, data analysis. Ah! Ah! Oh no, it's data analysis. Help, please. Immigration policy analyst at the Cato Institute, David Beyer, did something called very basic statistical analysis, or whatever, and found that the surge is exactly the same as the surge in 2019, when you control for repeat border crossings. I.e., if a refugee gets turned away from the border and desperately tries to recross again, probably to escape death or something, well, then the uptick in repeat border crossings can be directly linked to Title 42 expulsions. You see, the Trump administration had a very cool response to the COVID pandemic. They didn't advocate for masks or other public health measures, not nonsense, but they did use the pandemic as an excuse to summarily expel any migrant coming to the border, even those seeking asylum. But hey, Orange Man gone now, and now we have Mr. Corn Pop Daddy as our president. And so this policy is now exactly the same. Advocates have called on the Biden administration to reverse the Title 42 expulsion rules, saying that not only does it deny people their rights to seek asylum, but it creates unsanitary and unsafe conditions by forcing people into crowded refugee camps in Mexico rather than releasing them to family members. The logic of Title 42 expulsions is that we should summarily deny asylum seekers a chance to seek asylum to prevent the spread of COVID. And so we forced them into dense refugee camps or imprisoned them in overcrowded ICE detention centers, which reports have shown also increases the spread of COVID into the surrounding community. This approach to preventing COVID spread is like wearing an anvil out of an airplane instead of a parachute, so that the anvil can punish the ground for being there. And also, you're super racist. So this surge is manufactured from bad policy and Ted Cruz cosplay. But does that mean there's no crisis at the border?
Yay! Everything is back to normal!
Jesus fucking Christ, Warmbo.
See, Mr. Cody? Mr. President Biden's soul made everything okie-dokie. No more kids in cages. Now kids get to experience the loving comfort of overflow facilities. Yay!
Wow, that looks, it's very child-friendly.
They can make fun superhero capes out of their thermal blankets. Whee! Yay! Ha ha! Normal!
In a way, you're right, Warmbo.
I am?
Yes, we are, in a sense, going back to normal.
We are?
But in this case, normal is actually bad.
Oh, Wombo don't feel so good. Oh.
You see, often people like to preen about how we're a country of immigrants, but we're a country of good, legal immigrants. Like our founding fathers, who loved the concept of obeying authority.
We are a nation of immigrants, but we are also a nation of laws. It is wrong and ultimately self-defeating for a nation of immigrants to permit the kind of abuse of our immigration laws we have seen in recent years, and we must do more to stop it.
But for the first 100 years of US history, you were pretty much guaranteed to be a legal immigrant, because there was no such thing as illegal immigration. Our country was founded on open borders, and only in 1875 did we pass our first anti-immigration law. This was the Page Act of 1875, and it barred women from China from entering the US, which according to the lawmakers was meant to end the danger of cheap Chinese labor and immoral Chinese women. You see, it had the core American values of anti-Chinese racism, sexism, and topped off with the dehumanization of sex workers. Something we've totally left in our past and which has not come back to haunt us. Following the Page Act was the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, which banned all immigration from China. And if you're wondering if it was racist, yes, it was. In this washing machine advertisement poster in support of the law, not only are Chinese immigrants depicted in racist caricatures, or as conservatives now like to call it, free speech drawings. The text of the poster advertises that the magic washer will cleanse Chinese people from the country. It's a cleansing, an ethnicity, some kind of ethnic cleansing, if you will. Well, gosh, where else have we heard anti-immigration rhetoric that labels immigrants as dirty? Oh, right. Racism never went away. You know what else never went away? Using a disease as an excuse to be racist. During the turn of the century, there was an outbreak of the bubonic plague in San Francisco that originated from rats aboard cargo ships. Now, stop me if you've heard this one before, but also, the only way to stop me is stopping the video, so please don't. But anyway, while medical experts warned the plague was spreading in 1900, the California governor refused to acknowledge it for 2 years, fearing how it would impact business and hurt California's economy. History, it's so boring. Good thing we never pay attention to it. The plague impacted San Francisco's Chinatown due to the connection between cargo ships' port of entry and the sewers that ran directly to Chinatown, allowing ship rats to infect the citizens of Chinatown. But due to anti-Chinese racism, not only was the plague ignored, but when people finally started paying attention to it, it was blamed on Chinese immigrants, despite the fact that they caught it from cargo ships and it was allowed to spread due to California's governor. Wow, that's really interesting, but irrelevant to modern times, I am sure. So, because being racist is a beloved American tradition, residents of Chinatown were blamed, and anti-Chinese racism ran rampant. Chinese Americans had their civil liberties suspended, and the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 was extended indefinitely. Using a plague as an excuse to keep racist immigration laws. Where have I heard that one before? Oh, right, at the beginning of this episode when we talked about Title 42 like 5 minutes ago. Cool, our country truly has come a long way, baby. And hey, to be fair, our early immigration laws weren't just racist. The Immigration Act of 1882, wherein immigrants by boat had to pay a head tax of 50 cents, which in today's money is about $12. It also allowed immigration officials to expel any immigrants who were a convict, lunatic, idiot, or any person unable to take care of him or herself without becoming a public charge. Lunatic and idiot are old-timey words for people with mental disabilities. So basically, it meant we could kick neurodivergent people out of the country. Cool and very freedom.
Normal, but Mr. Cody, Biden is just trying to keep immigrants safe.
God, I thought you died. Nice while it lasted.
Mr. Cody, according to The Hill, one of my most favoriteest news is the Biden administration don't want immigrants to hurt themselves. They say the journey is dangerous. Mr. Papa Biden is telling them not to come for their own good.
Warmbo, why are border crossings so dangerous?
Ouchie cactuses?
No, Warmbo. Murderous U.S. policy.
Uh-oh. Mr. Cody's saying the no-no words again. Ah!
Often, anti-immigration policy is couched in concern. Obama warned parents in Central American countries not to send their children due to the danger of the border crossing.
Do not send your children to the borders. If they do make it, they'll get sent back. More importantly, they may not make it.
For reference, people send their children to the US to escape murder in Central America, partly due to the rise of gang violence. And hey, would you look at that? Turns out the rise of gang violence is caused by our deportation policy. Gangs that are started in the US are then exported to Central America as we deport their members. Then we blame Central Americans for desperately sending their children here because the US is very good at linear thinking, the best at that. But how did the border get to be so darn dangerous? Well, starting under Bill Clinton, rapist, and continuing under Bush, Obama, Trump, and Biden, some other rapists, there's been something called Operation Gatekeeper. This is a policy of militarizing the US-Mexico border, creating a deliberate death trap for migrants attempting to cross. Its stated goals were prevention through deterrence. The policy militarized areas of the border where border crossings were safer, near the California border, while having less presence to the east, near desert areas that were far more lethal. While congressional research admits that this has resulted in over 2 times the amount of deaths per year, which according to humanitarian groups estimates has killed over 10,000 people since 1994, the government's claim is that these deaths were unintentional. A real oopsie-goofer of an ethnic cleansing. Yikes-a-rooney doodle on that one, folks. But if it was a mistake, why was the stated intention of the policy a deterrence? What was the deterrence part, if not, you might die? Was the mistake that we underestimated how desperate people are to escape the poverty and violence-stricken nations ravaged by the US war on drugs? People were rightly horrified by Trump's deterrence policy of family separation, kidnapping kids from their parents' arms. The cruelty was the point. But how is Operation Gatekeeper different? In this case, the cruelty is still the point. The deterrence being forcing people to suffer and die while trying to cross in more dangerous areas. So there really is a border crisis, but it's a humanitarian crisis as a direct result of our own anti-immigration policy. What do we do about it? Well, according to Trump, we're simply too full. And according to Biden, don't come here. And according to our current Secretary of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas, now is not the time to come to the border. And while there's often hand-wringing about the humanitarian crisis,
we've got 15,000 kids in federal government custody. This is a humanitarian crisis.
We're simply too full to help out. As Ted Cruz writes in a Fox News op-ed, Texas is being overwhelmed by the magnitude of illegal immigrants flooding into small communities. So basically, too bad, so sad, nothing we can do about it, country's full. Which is weird because conservatives keep wanting us to have more babies, even though there's clearly no more room for those babies. That's weird. But are we really too full to be able to accept more immigrants? According to a total numbers nerd, our pal the data analyst at Cato Institute, David Beyer, even if the US had open borders with the entire Western Hemisphere, it still wouldn't get a foreign-born share equal to Australia or Switzerland, 30%. And last I checked, Australia's doing fine. Mostly. As is Switzerland.
Just take that.
Is it Swiss kangaroo? Anyway, other immigration researchers point out that demilitarization of borders, or gasp, open borders, a totally unreasonable thing that we did for the first 100 years of America, would not just increase immigration, it would lead to emigration, which you can't really tell, but I'm spelling it with an E, meaning people immigrating from the US to their home countries. According to immigration researcher and professor of sociology at Princeton, Douglas Massey, closing the borders with Mexico, instead of resulting in people staying in Mexico, actually forces people searching for a better life to stay inside the US due to the risks of repeat border crossings. Paradoxically, this exponential increase in border enforcement had no significant effect on the likelihood that a Mexican would choose to initiate unauthorized migration to the United States, and it had little influence on the probability of being apprehended at the border or the odds of ultimately achieving a successful US entry. The border buildup did, however, sharply raise the costs and risks of unauthorized border crossing. In response, migrants quite logically minimized border crossing, not by staying in Mexico as the policy's architects had imagined, but instead by remaining longer in the United States once entry had been achieved, dramatically reducing rates of return migration. So opening borders might actually start to create a healthier flow of migration and equilibrium between the US, Mexico, and Central America. But even if that's not the case, does it matter? There's something that isn't brought up much when talking about whether or not immigration is good or bad or neutral for America. Not immigrants built America, or it helps the economy, or we need skilled labor, but whether we should allow immigration to happen simply because it's the morally right thing to do. The whole country's full, we can't afford immigrants take rests on a theory of US supremacy. It assumes that US citizens are superior to people born in different countries. If we can't take in immigrants because these impoverished people might use some of our resources, we're basically saying our comfort is more important than their lives. You can argue whether or not increased immigration would be good or bad for the economy, but what we're admitting then is that we value the economy over human lives, something that totally never happens.
We're crushing small business. We're crushing the markets. We're crushing this country. And what I said when I was with you that night, there are more important things than living, and that's saving this country for my children and my grandchildren.
This is something glossed over in our discussions of children in cages versus children in overflow facilities. That our whole immigration system, starting from the Page Act and Chinese Exclusion Act to what we literally called Operation Gatekeeper, is that foreigners' lives are less valuable than our own, that we see them as less than human. If you wonder how we allow the cruelty of family separations to happen, or border patrol to destroy water left out for migrants, who then die of thirst in deserts due to border policy, this is why. Our whole immigration system is based on US American supremacy and on white supremacy, and Warmo's right here, isn't he?
If Mr. Cody doesn't stop saying bad no words about America, Wombo is going to scream.
What, you mean like America is willing to kill immigrant children to maintain our superiority? Nope. Hi everybody, thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment. And we've got a patreon.com/somemorenews and a podcast called Even More News and a merch store with shirts with this f***er's face on it. So, if you like that. Nothing? All right.